Salam doston and khush aamdeed to the latest episode of Funkaar ka Pakistan with your host Taneer Jannat from Radio LUMS. So पिछले कुछ episodes में हमने बात की about how identity works, and then we also had a guest where we mainly delved into ख़ास तौर पे पाकिस्तानी अदब क्या होता है. उसमें सिर्फ ये लिमिटेड नहीं है कि उर्दू अदब है या इंग्लिश है या कोई रीजनल लैंग्वेजेस हैं. एंड देन वी ऑल्सो हैड अ वेरी फन एपिसोड आफ्टर दैट. So today we're going to be interviewing another guest who I've had the pleasure of knowing for a good couple of years now. This person was my senior in high school also.
Unfortunately.
And just someone who has a very, very wholesome vibe to them. शायद मैं नाम बताने से पहले कुछ थोड़े से teasers दे दूँ into who this is. This person is also a student who goes to LUMS. They describe themselves as a storyteller and visual artist. They've worked with Levi's. They've worked with Coke Studio. And they've done really, really cool, artsy and fun fact, musical stuff also on Instagram. अगर आपको अभी भी नहीं पता चला तो फिर RIP. But otherwise, we will now welcome Haris Mahmood, also known as Harisism. So, Assalamu alaikum, Haris. How are you?
Walaikum assalam bhai, आपने बहुत लंबा introduction दिया.
No,
Thank you for that. I was just waiting कि अभी खत्म होगा. अभी खत्म होगा. But I'm good, alhamdulillah. How are you?
I am great also. Thank you for asking. So, I don't think that this introduction was long enough. I feel like you deserve much more praise. But
You're very kind.
No, so following that, we'd also ask you to give a little bit about yourself to our viewers and our listeners. So take it away.
My name is Haris, as Taneer already told you. I'm a student at LUMS. I'm majoring in management sciences, minoring in psychology. सारी अपनी CV details मैं अभी आपको बता रहा हूँ. But none of that happens to be like a primary interest for me. What I really identify with is that I am a visual artist. और अगर आसान ज़बान में कहा जाए तो मैं बस एक फनकार हूँ. I really live by that. Or I've been dwelling into this field for about 8 years at this point. Matlab technically 10 in the sense that in 2012 I started learning the software and then like formally stepped into it by when I was 14, I believe. So yeah, a long time coming, and I love everything about it. If I have to be very specific with regards to what sort of work that I do, so I am very enthusiastic about type in particular, also known as typography. और फिर उसके अंदर अगर और specific हों तो I really enjoy doing Urdu typography. That's something that really aligns well with me. And besides for that, I do other things that are within this umbrella of visual art, which includes stuff like animation, even photography, and outside that, filmmaking, vlogging. Basically, I'm just a very confused person, if that makes sense.
It's okay. That makes the two of us then, I guess. So you mentioned that you're a visual artist, but I once had a conversation with you where you said that आपको कहानियाँ सुनाने का शौक है, so a storyteller. So, and you just told us that you've been doing this for about 10 years. So how do you think your identity as a storyteller has transformed from your early teen life to teenage life and then into adulthood now? So more than the journey, just how does your identity change through all these times?
Sure, I think I will have to give some context to a journey in order to elaborate upon that. Even during my introduction, I did not mention storyteller, because I feel like with any sort of art form, be it any sort of artwork, किसी भी तरह का मतलब artistic काम हो, at the basis of it, there is a story, whether you tell it explicitly or whether you choose not to, right? So for me personally, I think this is like a whole journey on its own, just figuring out that अच्छा art के अंदर भी एक कहानी होती है. So just to give you guys a little bit of context, I won't say very, but I was passionate about art as a kid as well. मतलब मेरी पढ़ाई से इतनी कोई ख़ास बनती शनती नहीं थी और मतलब मजबूरन नहीं बनती थी. I tried my best, but I just wasn't as good as the rest, right? I struggled with my academics. And I think throughout all of that, anxious early childhood phase that I had, I would just keep on doing art. और बड़ी क्लीशे सी बात लग रही होगी कि हाँ वो बचपन से art का शौक है, वो comes naturally to me. But I mean, that's the truth. I remember first grade, second grade में भी कोई क्लास वर्क या कोई होमवर्क मिलता था तो मैं ना जानबूझ के उसके साथ एक रेलेवेंट कोई ड्राइंग बना, जैसे कि मुझे कहते थे कि ओ मेक अ सेंटेंस अबाउट अ हॉर्स, तो आई वुड बी लाइक दैट हॉर्स इज आई डोंट नो वेरी प्रिटी, और मैं साथ में घोड़ा बना देता था. तो एंड दैट वाज जस्ट वन वे ऑफ जस्ट getting attention as a kid. I think all of us crave that when we were kids, right? So that's how it started. Then I figured out that digital art was a thing, and this was like fast forward to when I was in 7th grade. So bachpan aisa guzra where I was doing just, you know, all of that stuff, and then I went to digital art. I think for the first time when I understood that art really had a story to tell was when I was in my A levels actually. तो उससे पहले मैं करता था, I used to make random football designs because I really liked football. Yeah. मतलब लेकिन उसके अंदर कोई purpose, कोई मकसद, कोई कहानी नहीं होती. It was just that I enjoyed doing it and people just liked it, so I would just post them on my Facebook page and stuff like that. I came to Lahore for the first time in my life when I was in my A levels. That might come off as a surprise. तो आप कह सकते हैं कि हाँ मैं वाकई जमिया नहीं था तब तक. I came here और मुझे यहाँ पे किसी ने एक बुक स्टोर रेकमेंड किया था कि हाँ तुम ज़रूर वहाँ पे ज़रूर जाना. उस बुक स्टोर का नाम है द लास्ट वर्ड. So I went there for the first time when I came to Lahore, and this was 2018 to be precise. So I was very surprised to find a design section at the bookstore, because मैंने आज से पहले किसी बुक स्टोर में कोई, या तो मैंने खुद कभी उस तजस्सुस के साथ देखा ही था कि अच्छा आर्ट और डिज़ाइन पे भी किताबें होती हैं, अच्छा ये वाकई ऐसे होता है. बट आई फाउंड दैट ओवर देयर. वहाँ पर एक किताब रियली स्टूड आउट टू मी. उस किताब का नाम था द पॉलिटिक्स ऑफ डिज़ाइन. तो बस मैंने आंखें बंद करके किताब पकड़ ली, एंड आई थिंक आई फिनिश दैट बुक. छोटी सी किताब थी, विद इन लाइक कपल ऑफ डेज ख़त्म कर ली. एंड आई थिंक दैट बुक जस्ट चेंज द वे दैट आई लुक at art. किताब के अंदर on its own like इस तरह कोई उसकी नीयत नहीं थी, मतलब it wasn't written with the intention कि this should change the way you think about design. But just getting to know that art and design generally has such a wider context, in the sense that, you know, different colors represent different things, and you know how art has been a very consistent theme in resistance related movements, how art has been a very consistent theme in political movements, and how its influence is just much more wider as compared to a static football design, right? So I took a break from football design. I stopped doing that entirely, and then I went on this other journey in which I was like, अच्छा मुझे कुछ ऐसा करना है जिसमें कुछ पर्पस होना चाहिए भाई, कुछ फुलफिलमेंट मुझे महसूस होनी चाहिए. ये फुटबॉल वाली चीज़ें तो मतलब कोई फुलफिलमेंट नहीं हो रही, मज़ा आता है, बट लाइक आई डोंट फाइंड एनी पर्पस इन इट एज सच, एंड एट द सेम टाइम माई पैशन फॉर फुटबॉल वाज ड्रेनिंग डाउन लिटिल एज वेल. So that's when I turned to Urdu typography. So if I have to just say it very broadly, is tarah tha ki like initially I would do art without knowing that art had a story. So my identity in that case was someone who just enjoyed art for the sake of art, because I just enjoyed the process and I had fun in it. And as I grew up and I went to do my A levels and then came to university, आहिस्ता आहिस्ता उस आइडेंटिटी में ज़्यादा डेप्थ बढ़ती गई, एंड मेरा जो आर्ट के साथ रिश्ता था उसके अंदर डेप्थ बढ़ती गई, बिकॉज आई स्टार्ट रियलाइजिंग कि भाई इसके अंदर बहुत ज़्यादा ताकत है. इट हैज़ अ लॉट ऑफ पावर इन इट, एंड इट can mobilize people. It can bring about movements, and it's not just a man playing with a football and, you know, you just add a few effects to it. So yeah, to just be very precise, with age it has only and only grown in depth, and I have only and only been able to understand the depth of it, or perhaps the impact that it holds with time, and I'm sure there's a lot of more learning in that regard too.
That's actually wonderful, and it also sort of touches upon something that we'll be discussing later, you know, how art is political and design is political also. But isme you mentioned ke, you know, sort of your work has seen this change from coming from outside of Pakistan, because these footballers aren't Pakistani, to completely a local context. And there's a lot of research that goes into this. So the part that really got to me was there's a lot of features of classical music in your art. The Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan animation that you've made, उसके अलावा जो इस्लामाबाद के सकाफती दौरे वाली वीडियो है, so this is it's a completely 180-degree change, and you've mentioned why it came, but stylistically what prompted that change, going from making just a visual to making a video? So maybe essentially like video editing or videography, stylistically what changed?
Okay, so while I was going through this whole journey in which I was like, bhai mujhe ab bas ek static football design nahi banana, I want to make something that's more influential. I also started taking this one thing very seriously. I was like, whatever I make, it needs to have value in it. और ज़रूरी नहीं है कि एक आर्ट वर्क के अंदर हर वक्त ही वैल्यू. I mean, we've seen bananas being pasted on walls and just, that has been labeled art as well. But that's just one metric that I kept for myself. I was like, if I am doing something and मैं कुछ बना रहा हूँ, then I'm sharing it with an audience on the web as well. तो अगर कोई बंदा या बंदी 10 सेकंड निकाल के भी अगर मेरी कोई एनिमेशन या कुछ भी देख रही है, they should feel some sort of utility in it. It should make them feel a certain something. It should, or perhaps they should be able to learn something out of it. मतलब उसका कोई एक माइक्रो इम्पैक्ट ज़रूर होना चाहिए. So the decision to experiment with more art forms was prompted by this idea in general कि whatever I want to make sure that it's not something जिस पे मैंने अपनी दिल और जान से मतलब मेहनत नहीं की, and at the same time it doesn't have to be something जिससे दूसरा बंदा देखे और they don't find utility in it. अब obviously मैं ये ensure तो नहीं कर सकती हर कोई उसके अंदर utility ढूंढे, but that was my wider aim के मतलब कोई ना 1 out of 5 people, 1 out of 10 people, statistically you can't really tell, but that was just generally the idea behind it. And the change on its own कि भाई football design से going from international to something that's very local, that's something that's very desi, something that's very centered in Pakistani, let's call it, right? I feel like that on its own was also something that was always there in me, मतलब मेरे अंदर था. I just didn't know how to express it. And when I went on this journey where I keep on using this phrase that I went on this journey, I don't know, बहुत बड़ा तीर मार लिया. But I think I don't have a better word to phrase it. Anyway, so I was saying that when I started dwelling into that, और मैं फिर इस search पे निकल गया कि मुझे कुछ ऐसा करना है जिसमें ज़्यादा meaning हो. तो I came across a couple of Middle Eastern designers. और मैंने थोड़ा मिडल ईस्टर्न आर्ट सीन को एक्सप्लोर किया और मुझे पता चला कि भाई मिडल ईस्ट पर्शिया तो उसका खैर पुराना नाम है, बट इराक इज़ व्हाट आई मीन कि वो वाला जो पूरा एरिया है वहाँ पर सब लोग अरबी के अंदर ही काम करते हैं. एंड इट्स सो वाइड स्प्रेड दैट एक्चुअली ऐसा है कि इन द मिडल ईस्ट देयर आर रेगुलेशंस फॉर companies outside of the Middle East, जैसे कि I don't know if Subway wants to come to Middle East and they want to open up a franchise of theirs और या अपनी branch को खोलनी है, there are regulations from the governments of those countries कि भाई आपको अपना logo Arabic में translate करना है तो तभी आप operate कर सकते हैं. And that served as such major inspiration in the sense that I was like, ये लोग अपनी ज़बान को कितनी अहमियत देते हैं भाई. And look at me and look at the people around me who are working in this space. Like I don't think anyone works in Urdu typography or anyone takes interest in desi design or anything that's Pakistani. अब उस पे आप मतलब I will concede that obviously मेरा exposure भी इतना नहीं था. There were certainly artists at that time as well, and we have certainly had artists before that as well. I'm just telling you what I felt in the moment. And as a consequence of that was like a stimulus that drove me कि भाई मुझे भी कुछ उर्दू में करना चाहिए. मतलब ये क्या बात हुई. But if I have to be honest, that wasn't the sole reason behind it. I also struggled with languages in general when I was growing up. तो मेरा background पख्तून है. I am from Malakand पता नहीं आप लोगों को पता है कि चलो खुशी हुई सुनकर. And then I settled in Islamabad क्योंकि अब बाकी पोस्टिंग यहाँ पर थी. तो मैं essentially पला बड़ा इस्लामाबाद में हूँ, लेकिन my roots are पठान. और because of that virtue then I was exposed to 3 different languages, पश्तो, English and Urdu. तो उसके बीच में भी एक हमेशा एक टसल रहती थी कि English was something that I had to learn in school और उर्दू और पश्तो ऐसी ज़बानी थी जो कि मुझे बस अपने आसपास के मुआशरे ने सिखाई. एंड व्हेन आई वाज ग्रोइंग अप मैंने इस चीज़ को बड़ा ही बहुत ज़्यादा महसूस किया कि जब आप स्पेसिफिकली स्कूल में, एंड इफ़ यू गो टू अ प्राइवेट स्कूल, तो वहाँ पर अगर आप अंग्रेज़ी अगर आपको बोलनी आती थी तो आपको एक मुख्तलिफ़ तरीके से परसीव किया जाता था, एंड इफ़ यू स्ट्रगल विद इट तो फिर आपको एक मुख्तलिफ़ नज़रिए से देखा जाता था.
Definitely.
एंड दैट प्लेड आउट इन वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग कॉन्टेक्स्ट इन द सेंस के लाइक यू नो इफ़ यू वर टॉकिंग टू समवन ऑफ द ऑपोजिट जेंडर एज वेल, इफ़ यू वांट टू लर्न इंप्रेशन यू वर टॉक इन इंग्लिश, ओके, यू वर नॉट टॉकिंग इन उर्दू, उर्दू इज़ नॉट कूल. और ये बात मेरे अंदर मतलब सेटल नहीं हो पाती थी, बिकॉज मैं उस वक्त में बहुत बड़ा स्ट्रगल करता था ज़बानों को बोलने में. और वक्त के साथ साथ मतलब मैं फर अंग्रेज़ी बोल रहा हूँ, उसका मकसद बिल्कुल भी ये नहीं दिखाना कि अच्छा मुझे अंग्रेज़ी आती है, बट इट्स जस्ट ईज़ ऑफ कम्युनिकेशन की वजह से, एंड गिवन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट एज वेल. तो मैं उस फ़र्क को बहुत ज़्यादा महसूस करता था, और उसका जो मेरे ऊपर कॉन्सिक्वेंटली असर होता था उसको भी बहुत ज़्यादा महसूस करता था. तो when I saw all of this मिडल ईस्टर्न डिज़ाइन सीन वाला चक्कर, तो मैंने कहा भाई ये तो if I can do something about it, I should definitely take initiative. तो one of the major reasons, या एक बहुत बड़ी बुनियादी वजह कि मैंने अपना काम उर्दू टाइपोग्राफी के रिलेट क्यों किया, वो ये थी कि आई जस्ट वांटेड, मैं चाहता था कि हम उर्दू ज़बान को फ़रोग़ दें. मैं चाहता था कि कल को मेरे जैसा बच्चा उस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में, बिकॉज ऐसा ही है कि शहरों में जो बच्चे आते हैं वो तो मतलब गांव देहात से ही आए होते हैं. एवरीवन, स्पेशली इस्लामाबाद में तो सब लोग गांव देहात से ही आए होते हैं. इस्लामाबाद के इनहेरेंटली अपने लोग तो बहुत कम है. तो मैं चाहता था कि बस कल को अगर कोई और बच्चा उसी पोजीशन में हो, वो मतलब कोई झिझक ना महसूस करे अपनी ज़बान बोलते हुए. तो दैट वाज द ओनली रीज़न बिहाइंड व्हाई आई डिसाइडेड टू pursue Urdu typography, and I still do it to this very day, just so that it becomes very easy for not just for kids who feel vulnerable, but just generally our society as a whole as well, for us to essentially overcome that colonial hangover, and English को जब वो एक दर्जा देते हैं, एक पेडेस्टल पे रखते हैं,
Yeah.
उसको essentially हम थोड़ा reconsider कर सकें.
That's actually great. So you actually mentioned, this is actually what the question was going to be, कि आपने अपनी पख्तून आइडेंटिटी के बारे में बात की, and very recently, by recently, day before yesterday, you posted the animation with Ghani Khan, the poet. So you've touched upon how that played into why you got into, like regional languages के surrounding art and just visual art. But how do you think that your identity as a Pathan or as a Pakhtun has helped your creative process? So with that, we'll also look into how your diversification of your art style. I've seen you've done pixel art, you've done photo manipulation, videography, illustration, animation, only to name a few. So do you think that this has helped you to tap into different parts of your identity consistently and constantly?
That's a very interesting question. I think that's something that needs a lot of depth as well. But I'll be very honest about it. The only reason why I choose to just play around with so many different art forms is that बस मेरे अंदर एक genuine किस्म का एक तजस्सुस है, in which drives me to want to learn new things. And that isn't just restricted to the confinements of art or the discipline of art or just practicing art. That's related to other things that I enjoy as well. For instance, मुझे psychology बहुत पसंद है, तो फिर चूँकि मुझे psychology बहुत पसंद है, I just really enjoy learning about the discipline as a whole. आप मुझे बैठ के मेरे साथ 15 मिनट ही बैठ के नफ्सियात पर गुफ्तगू कर लें, मैं आपको गौर से सुनूंगा, क्योंकि मेरे अंदर बस वो तजस्सुस है. That thirst of knowledge is there only for things that I enjoy though, and art is easily the thing that I enjoy the most. तो बेसिकली जो मेरी एक तरह से आप कह लें कि मेरा एक इंडिविजुअल एफर्ट है in order to acquaint myself with new art styles and in order for me to practice new art styles, it's driven by the fact that I just want to learn as much as I can. And जहाँ तक उसका मेरी आइडेंटिटी से ताल्लुक़ है, I think it just goes on to show or perhaps just cement यही चीज़, this very let's say this very primary trait that I have, which is that I'm a curious person and I am a curious artist as well because of that virtue. So me playing around with different art styles and me trying to play around with different sort of mediums to express what I want to is basically just a representation of the fact that I'm a curious person. If you want me to talk about art styles or why I chose to I choose to use a certain, let's say, a certain color palette or a certain way of drawing people. That's all of that is rooted in experiences. I am a very observant person, और ये मैं अपनी तारीफ करने की नीयत से नहीं कह रहा. I'm just trying to explain. I'm a very observant person in the sense कि मैं जब बाहर जाता हूँ तो I observe the smallest of visual cues, जैसे कि I don't know pamphlets जो ज़मीन पे गिरे होते हैं, या I don't know ding dong की bubble उसकी packaging होगी to
which you post on your Instagram story also.
Oh, that's
keep
true. You keep up. To billboards, to marketing campaigns, anything that I can see visual inspiration in. So that serves as basically my idea pool. I try to garner as much as I can, and then somehow वो सब फिर मेरे काम में reflect होता है one way or another. So if I'm using a very poppy, vibrant visual, there's a very good chance कि क्या पता 2 साल पहले मैं किसी लाहौर की किसी सड़क पे फिर रहा हूँ और वहाँ पे मैंने कोई पुरानी किसी गली के अंदर कोई पोस्टर देख लिया होगा और मैंने कहा होगा यार एक दिन मैं इसको बनाऊँगा, इसको replicate करूँगा, या मैं perhaps I'll use this as a source of inspiration. So the different art styles are like dwelling into pixel art or dwelling into I don't know a very 1960s 70s style with very poppy and vibrant colors. That's all because I like to observe a lot of things, and consequently I try to put all of that into my art as well. Is this question also about mediums? Why do I fluctuate between the mediums and whether that has helped me?
If you want to, sure.
Mediums की अगर बात की जाए तो I don't think that brings my answer to a very different danger or anything of that sort. I think with mediums as well, it's just curiosity. I saw Casey Neistat vlogging and I was like, भाई मुझे भी करना है. I saw Irfan Juneja vlogging, and I saw Irfan Juneja vlogging in Urdu in a Pakistani context. I was like, I love this man, मुझे भी ये करना है. So it's all because I see other people doing it, and I don't know where does this curiosity or where does this willingness to perhaps try to do the same thing comes from. But I'm just like, I want to do it too. I want to see how it feels. Does it bring me any utility? Do I enjoy? Do other people enjoy me watching what I make or stuff like that? They do. You're just being kind.
No, I'm being honest. ठीक है. So a little bit about how your Pathan identity has helped shape this. So do you think that that's something that has sort of, I think अक्सर जब हम अपनी identity को perceive करते हैं as a post-colonial state, there's a lot of shame and guilt attached to it.
For sure.
I'm not Pakistani enough, I'm not Desi enough, or in your case, I'm not Pathan enough. So do you think you felt that and wanted to sort of like, rectify that in your work?
That's a very cool question. I feel like आपकी identity, as much as it is rooted in roots, what a weird sentence, in the sense कि आपकी ethnicity क्या है, I think it also has to do with the environment that you were nurtured in. I felt that guilt more for just being someone who's perhaps hesitant in speaking Urdu. मतलब मुझे वो जो guilt है वो ज़्यादा उर्दू के साथ associated होता था as compared to being a Pathan. However, we have developments ever since I've came to LUMS. So yahan for the very first time I had an all Pathan friend group. In my entire life before that I never had that. If anything मैं अपने पठान दोस्तों के साथ भी पश्तो नहीं बोलता था इस्लामाबाद में, क्योंकि बस आदत नहीं थी, और perhaps कह सकते हैं कि थोड़ा बहुत गिल्ट भी था, बस मुझे महसूस इतना विविडली नहीं होता था because क्या मेरे मर के 2-3 पठान दोस्त थे. But because at LUMS you just have such a diverse community, people coming from different regions, I was able to befriend a lot of Pathans, and they were the ones who actually helped me speak the language. मतलब मुझे हमेशा इस तरह की चीज़ें थोड़ा डराती थी कि वो मेरा जो डायलेक्ट है वो ठीक है, क्या मैं एक लफ्ज़ को सही तरीके से प्रोनाउंस करता है या नहीं. मुझे बहुत झिझक महसूस होती थी. And I would say within months of just being around my friends, they helped me overcome that. And because of that, I was like, okay, इस पर भी थोड़ा ध्यान देना चाहिए. मतलब ठीक है, उर्दू बेहतरीन है, अच्छा है, लेकिन रीजनल ज़बानों की भी अपनी इज़्ज़त होती है. I grew up with this language. My mother tongue, Urdu is not my mother tongue. मेरी मादरी ज़बान तो पश्तो. So that made me want to explore Pashto literature, Pashto poetry, Pashto music. ये जो पूरा region है ना, this is जो कि इसको मैं भी एक्सप्लोर कर रहा हूँ, दिस इज़ अ वेरी रीसेंट डेवलपमेंट. मतलब कह लें कि पिछले 1-2 साल के अंदर I've been going into that, and as a consequence of it, if anything, it has only made me appreciate the language more and own up to it as well. जो आपकी बात थी ना अबाउट colonial guilt वगैरह, I think I'm sort of आप कह सकते हैं कि I don't feel that with Urdu anymore because I've been able to fight it off. With Pashto, it's in the process, and I can say that it's going smooth. It's going really well. You'll get to see a lot of art from me.
We're looking forward to it. So finally, we come to our question, which I think sort of like ties everything together. So, because I've been following your work, so I noticed that on events like International Women's Day and on 14th August, your work has included elements of resistance. So, and you talked about, you know, the politics of art and the politics of design. And so it is very clear that you also think that art has a political nature. So then how does your art situate itself as a social factor? And what's the one thing that makes it, you know, imperative for it to be out in the political atmosphere?
आपने बहुत बड़े बड़े अल्फाज इस्तेमाल किए हैं. I'll try my best to pretend I know what she means. I'm kidding. खैर यार, I have to be honest, yeah, it's true. There is a sort of, I won't say political intent behind my work because that will make it super controversial, but मेरे ख्याल से there is definitely some sort of motive that's there. मतलब इस तरह नहीं होता कि मैं एक आइडियोलॉजी उठा के आपके ऊपर फेंकूंगा अपने काम के थ्रू. I'll just highlight it if I feel strongly about it. So my work definitely has that in it, and I strongly believe in it. I feel like a lot of the fulfillment that I get from my work is as a consequence of that, knowing that what I do can have a far more reaching impact as... I don't know what I was about to say, but, you know, knowing that, you know, what I do has a far more reaching impact than just something that's just limited to Instagram. Perhaps अगर मैं एक बंदे को भी मजबूर कर लेता हूँ एक चीज़ के बारे में सोचने में, जैसे कि I posted out गनी खान, राइट, अगर मेरे दोस्तों में से या मेरी ऑडियंस में से 5-6 लोग भी जाके if they go and look up who Ghani Khan is and his contributions to the Pakistani state and then independence movement and, you know, things like खुदाई खिदमतकार, all of these चीज़ें अगर कुछ लोग भी उस मिशन पे निकल जाए ना कि oh, let me find out more about this, I think that brings me a lot of happiness and a lot of fulfillment in the work that I do. So going back to your question, I do think that the work that I do has consequences, and if you were to ask me, I personally don't explicitly like to brand it as something that's political, but as an artist I think आप उन्हीं चीज़ों के बारे में बात करते हैं या उन्हीं चीज़ों के बारे में कुछ बनाना पसंद करते हैं या अपने आप को एक्सप्रेस करना चाह रहे होते हैं, that constitute you as a person and all that goes on in here, right? So most of the work that I have done and I plan on doing are things that I'll strongly feel about, and I'll always use art as a medium to sort of express it and bring it out to the world and hope that the world takes something away from it, and then that goes on to a more macro level. Obviously बहुत बड़ी बातें मैं कर रहा हूँ, but that's what my intent is. ये मेरी उम्मीद है, मुझे उम्मीद है कि basically उससे कुछ होगा.
Inshallah. That's very reassuring to know, and I'm really glad we have someone like you. So thank you so much for taking the time out, and हमारे पास आने के लिए उर्दू में भी बहुत शुक्रिया. It was a pleasure having to talk to you, and not having to talk to you. This was out of my own free will. So I hope you have a great day, and we all love your work. We love it.
Would you like me to speak or not?
You can speak.
I would just like to say thank you. You've been very kind to me. It was really nice having... I was about to say it was really nice having you on the show, but thank you for having me on the show. And हाँ, उर्दू पे मुझे अच्छा लगा आपने थोड़ा बहुत बोल लिया और मैंने ही बोल लिया. मुझे लग रहा है मेरी बड़ी छत्रोल होगी इस पे कि ओए तू तो बहुत उर्दू पे काम करता है, कहाँ पे गई तेरी? नहीं, I'm just joking. But खैर, likewise as well. Thank you for all the kind words that you said, and I generally had a great time too.
That's great. मेरी तरफ से खुदा हाफिज. Hope you're all keeping happy and healthy, and मिलते हैं एक वक्फे के बाद.